The Windows PowerShell remains the primary command line interface and scripting language for managing the Windows Server operating systems as well as the client operating systems. And so in this demo, I just want to go through an introduction to Windows PowerShell. I realize that many of you may not be brand new to Windows, at least from an IT perspective. And so therefore, since PowerShell was introduced in Windows Vista and Server 2008, you may already have a good handle on it. But I find in a lot of the classes that I teach that that's not always the case, and people seem to have shied away from PowerShell in many cases due to the learning curve. And the problem with that is that Microsoft is all in Windows PowerShell. The enhancements that have occurred to PowerShell have been vast and have come in every single version. And so therefore, it's imperative that we know how to use Windows PowerShell, just the basics. Certainly, we have to know the actual commands that are used in order to configure a server, set up an IP address, get the list of services, events from an event log, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of times where they try to trip you up on the exams are not in the actual commands themselves, but in the syntax. And so just understanding the syntax and the tools that you can use is going to be very beneficial. So let's start here. We're on Server 2016. I'm going to just open up Windows PowerShell from the Start menu. I would highly suggest just right-clicking on PowerShell, the 64-bit version, and making sure that that's on the taskbar. Okay. And so you can pin it to the taskbar by just going to More and then selecting to pin to taskbar. Okay. Another good suggestion, and you don't always have to do this, but is to right-click PowerShell and run it as an administrator. So that opens up PowerShell, and we are given just a command line interface. It looks very much like cmd.exe. Now I'm just going to show you a couple basics. We're not going to spend time here on this, but just some things that you can do. You can completely modify the colors if you'd like. I'm just going to leave mine at the default colors. But one thing you might want to do is go and change the font. All right, so I'm going to increase the font here, and they actually do give you quite a few different options for fonts, so you can kind of find one that fits the way what you want to look at. All right. So I'm just going to leave it at the console fonts, but I am going to increase it in its size so that it just makes it a little bit easier to see. And then sometimes when you do that, notice you're going to get scroll bars on the bottom. And you want to try to avoid that if at all possible, because as you try to type from line to line, it's going to make some of the command not visible. This is a little trick. Go to the layout and make the screen buffer size the same as the screen width size. So as soon as I go to do that, then it will have eliminated. Now it's hard to see because of the taskbar, but it eliminated that scrolling. Okay. So PowerShell commands follow a basic syntax of verb-noun. Let's use a command as an example. Get event log. Okay, so verb-noun. Get is the verb. I'm retrieving an object. Get is probably the most common verb there is. Then dash, and then the noun. In this case, it's event log. Now you have tab completion of PowerShell commands. So if I were to hit tab there, it took a second. Notice it kind of tab completed for me. It filled the rest in. So get event log, then space, dash, and the name of a parameter. In this case, the name of the parameter that I want is log name. Once again, I hit tab. I'm going to hit tab all the time. There's tab completion for commandlets, and there's tab completion for individual parameters. Space, and then a value. Okay, now I'm going to put quotes around the value. Notice that when I was missing a quote, the color there changed to red. The version of PowerShell here in Server 2016 adds some of these cosmetic changes, and it actually makes things a whole lot more helpful. Okay, because it'll identify problems that it sees in the commands, makes error checking a lot better. It's also just doing color coding, so it's showing me the difference between a commandlet, a parameter, and a value. Now, if your values don't have spaces, then you don't need any quotes. And you can use single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter. There is a difference but you don't run into the difference until you're starting to work with variables and do scripting. Okay, so that's a very simple command. Get me all of the events in the application log. Now I may want to specify additional parameters, like I just want to see the warnings, okay? And so then I can hit enter and it would show me only the warning event. Just installed this system, so I'm thinking we shouldn't have very many of these, but there we've got an error because I haven't activated it. So we've got a few errors in there. Let's change this. We can just modify this to being the system log. Let's see if we've got any errors in the system log. Sure enough. Okay, so that's your basic syntax of a command. Now, the other nice thing, and I'm just going to clear my screen here. The other nice thing about PowerShell is help is available to you really at any time. You can just type in the word help and then the commandlet that you would want help on and hit enter. Okay. Now it's going to show you very basic levels of help by default. They started not including all of the help files in PowerShell and instead requiring you to run the update help command. Okay, so it says right there in the remarks, it's only displaying partial help. If you want to get the full help files for this commandlet on this computer, then you need to run the update help commandlet. Now I haven't even configured this machine in the slightest. I haven't given it an IP address. It doesn't have internet connectivity, so I'm not going to actually be able to update help. But if you run help like that, that gives you just the syntax there. If you run the help command like this and specify that you want to see examples, it would show you examples. Now I realize it's showing me the same thing, and the reason is I need to run update help. Okay, so dash examples dash full dash detailed. Those are options as well. Show window is an option. Let's use the show window. Nice thing about show window is it pops up a little dialog box that actually shows you the help. Okay, and this is giving you more information. It's giving you all the parameters and whether the parameter is required or positional or named or things of that nature. Okay. Now a lot of these commands like get service, get process, get event log, they support a computer name parameter. And so you can specify the computer name of the system that you want to get that information from. Just repeat the command. I just used localhost because as of right now I just have one virtual machine. But that is using PowerShell remoting, which was introduced in PowerShell version 2.0. Now that's just a one-to-one remoting that's possible. We can also use the enter PS session commandlet. And the enter PS session commandlet takes a computer name and then actually establishes a persistent remote session with that system. So then I can execute multiple commands against that system. Okay. If you want to find out information about the commandlets that are available, then your best option is the get command option. Now, if you simply hit get command and hit enter, this thing is going to go on and on and on and on. This is a server with no roles installed on it. These are just the default commands. And so that is somewhat, mind-boggling. So let me Control-C to stop that. I'm not suggesting that we do that. But what I am suggesting that we do is use the get command and then follow it up with a module. Okay, now you may not be able to do this right off the bat because you may have no idea what module something's in. So let's say, let me look for any commands with the letters IP. Okay, now that's still going to be a ton of commands, but it may get me a little bit closer to what I wanted, because I can go up and I can see, okay, hey, there's a get net IP address command. And what module is that in? What's in the net adapter module? Okay, or there's a net TCP IP module. So then I clear the screen and I enter the command again, only this time I say, just show me the commands in the net adapter module. And then it simply displays the commands in that particular net adapter module. Okay, and there's still quite a few. And one of those commands, though, was get net IP address. For some reason, my screen keeps doing that. Okay, so get net IP address, and that's going to display the IP addresses associated with this system. Get net IP address and then address family, IPv4. Okay, and then it just shows me the IPv4 addresses. And so you can see, though, how I can go from searching for a command with a particular name in it to then searching for all the commands in a particular module. And then once I've found the command, that's the point where I can then go get help about that particular command. And let's try another one. Get net IP configuration is another command that's somewhat similar in its output, okay? Although it's displaying a lot less information. Okay, so it's actually just showing me the name of the name of the connection. So let's go back here to get net IP address, interface alias, I believe was Ethernet 3. Nope. Oh, just Ethernet, excuse me. Okay, so just Ethernet. And I got an error there, and it just said it couldn't find the object with that particular interface alias value. Okay, but now it's going to show me that interface and all of the IP addresses on that particular interface. Now let's say that I wanted to, view some additional information, or I don't want to display all of this information. So you can filter your results. I'm going to do the same command, but I'm going to say that I want to only see address family IPv4, and then I'm going to use the pipe symbol. Okay, now I realize that, let me back it up here. So the pipe symbol, which will then extend to the next line and allow me to do some filtering. Okay, and so I can say, let's just format in a table. We're not seeing the F. Let's format in a table, and I just want to see interface alias, address family, and IP address. Okay, and then it only shows me that information that I asked for. If you want it in a list, you can say that you want to format it in a list. You want to create a report, which we wouldn't need to here, but you want to create a report and dump it out to a particular file, we can do that too. Okay, so the pipe command, or the pipe symbol, allows me to take the output of one command and feed it into another command. Now, quite honestly, we could spend an hour and a half here in a demo on all of the basics and sorting and manipulating and filtering objects. That's going to go too far, all right? But I want to give you some of the basics, the general syntax, the way to find information out about commands, the way to get help on those commands. I need to give you some of that, I think, before we go forward. As we start doing demonstrations for a lot of the other things we'll talk about in this course, we'll frequently be using PowerShell. And so we want everybody on the same page. Okay, now in addition to Windows PowerShell, you also have the PowerShell ISE. And so you can run ISE as administrator, and that's going to open up a separate integrated scripting editor. Okay, now when it just opens up, it looks like it's the same, save the command pane over here, but you have a script pane as well. All right, and this script pane will recognize commands that you type in. It'll actually even use IntelliSense to bring up the potential values. Okay, if you want to run what's in the script pane, you just click F5 or run script, and it will it'll execute that. I guess I didn't complete that and type in localhost. So it'll execute it down below. It'll show me the results. We can use this to write scripts and save this information into PS1 files. This is also a great learning tool. You don't have to be using the script pane. You can just be using the console down here. But notice what it does. Get event log. And notice how I had to tab in regular PowerShell to see that information. But over here, it's using IntelliSense. And it's even showing me the possible values for the log name. I mean, this really takes a lot of the guessing out of it. So you can just hit enter, and then I want to see entry types, and it shows me the possible values for entry types. And let's see, let's go with the newest and then I specify an integer value. So now it's just showing me the latest 10 error messages in the application log. But you can see how IntelliSense really walked me right through that process. Over here, we can do searches. I had done a search for IP address. So I just type in IP. Maybe then I figure out that it probably needs to be net IP. And so I can see then that I can use the get net IP address. And if I hit show details, it's actually showing me a graphical version of that command. It identifies the different parameters that are necessary, and it identifies the those parameters that would actually be required. Now, with a get statement, there aren't going to be any parameters that are required, but with set statements, new, remove, enable, disable, there are going to be required parameters. Okay, so for instance, we'll just grab this one for IP security, but the enable net IP security rule commandlet will have different required parameters. And so we can actually see those because they'll be wildcarded, okay? And it shows up as mandatory. So my point is simply that ISE is a very useful tool from a scripting perspective and should be used for that reason, but it's also a very useful tool from a learning perspective because it does a few things that the regular standard PowerShell does not do. Having said that, these new cosmetic changes to Windows PowerShell are a great addition in Windows Server 2016 with the color coding and the error checking and those kinds of things. All right, so like I said, we could spend a ton more time. We don't need to. PowerShell is very important, though. You need to get into it. You need to not be afraid of it. The more you play around with it, the better you're going to get. Do that in test environments, not in production environments if possible. But it's definitely something that we want to spend a good amount of time on in order to learn it, in order to be able to use it in a practical sense in today's environments, and in order to be able to answer exam questions.